How's it going, everyone? I purchased the Primary Arms Classic Series Micro Reflex sight to replace the Sealy Cat red dot that I had installed on my P322. The main reason is, of course, the Cat came defective out of the box. Returned it, got a refund. Didn't really want to exchange it for another one. It was an okay sight, but when I saw the Primary Arms, I thought it looked a little bit better. There are a few things I like about this. One is the flat top design and the aluminum housing. It just feels a little bit sturdier in the hand. And I was happy to see that the glass is also clearer than the other red dot sights I had, including the one I had up until recently on my P322, which was the Crimson Trace CTS 1550. The reason I really like this is, of course, the manual adjustments, which is one thing I didn't like about the Crimson Trace. Overall, it's a great little red dot. It's just I like the control of the brightness settings. Sometimes it's just a little too much or not enough. And having that little flexibility makes a big difference when you're out there. You don't get frustrated. So I thought it was worth changing out the red dot for that. I still don't get the rear notch sights, so I'm not able to co-witness, unfortunately for me. If you're putting it on a different gun that allows you to keep your rear sights once you've installed an optic on it, you should be able to co-witness with it. My model gun just doesn't happen to have that feature. The battery gets mounted or installed from the bottom of the actual housing. That allows these to be just a thinner profile. If you look at the Leupold Delta Point Pro, that battery gets installed from the top. It's one of the thickest red dots out there. Then you have some of the Hollow Suns where the battery gets installed from the side, like a little side mounting tray. Those are a little thicker as well. So I don't mind changing out the battery every so often. This one does boast 40,000 hours of runtime at the medium setting, which is right about where I typically have mine. So that's definitely not going to be an issue. This one does come with the little microfiber cloth. I never really use these. I just don't think they get anything off. I feel like I'm just sliding on the glass. And it does come with 3 sets of mounting screws, different sizes. It does come with this cool little cap. Now this is my old dot. I just left it in here because I do plan on just selling it and getting rid of that. But I'm going to keep it in this box. But these are the original contents of the red dot, and I'm referring to the Primary Arms. So it's got the 2 Allen keys. One is for installing the 2 screws, and the other thinner one is for the adjustments for the elevation and the windage. So it's pretty basic, nothing crazy fancy about it. The only thing that's not in here is the instruction manual. That's just because I took it out and left it out. But it is an overall good sight. I'm liking it so far. I really like that it doesn't have branding all over the place. It does have where it says the PA for Primary Arms, but again, it's not written across the whole thing in bright white or some other obnoxious color. So it's a pretty decent little setup. Now this is what it looks like with the gun installed, or not the gun installed, but the red dot installed on the gun. It's got a nice little slick look to it. Now I did wish it had rear sights, but again, that's the slide and the gun, not the red dot. It does have a little bit of a bevel right there, so if you were to rack it against something, you'd be hitting the housing, not the actual glass. On these, I typically don't do that, but I do find myself grabbing the optic a lot of times to just pull back and rack it, because it's towards the top, so it's not a huge deal. But I like the way it looks. One thing I will say about these buttons, they're a little lower than most. Most of them are towards the center. I found myself kind of pressing on the side of the housing and then realizing I have to, just go a little bit lower. And it's only something to note because the button's also smaller. It's not a negative on the gun. It's just something that I have to get used to because I am used to guns having, or red dots I should say, having the buttons towards the center. This one, just note, it's a little lower. You can definitely feel a solid click on these. So it's not like the mushy feel where you have to be looking at the dot. When you press this, you definitely feel a positive click. You just can't hear it, so it doesn't have an audible click, which is fine. Especially if I'm out there shooting a little vermin and I don't want to make noise when I'm trying to adjust the red dot. So that's perfect for what I'm going to use it for. And that's the little branding it has. Again, it's just a little engraved PA with a circle on it. And on the other side, it's the exact same thing. So no bright colors, no anything, just that takes away from the red dot, which I certainly appreciate. The only thing that I also like on mine to be noticeable is just the direction of the arrow for the elevation and the windage, and that's it. Just leave it pretty, simple. And it does have a real cool slick look to it. It's got these lines on top. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be anti-glare or if they just did it for aesthetics, but in either case, I think it looks pretty cool. I'm going to take this out to the range hopefully in the next day or two to try it out. As long as it can hold its zero, I'm going to be happy. And as long as it's easy to zero as well. One of the things I'm not a big fan of are these small type of Allen adjustments that red dots have. I understand that they do that because it's the overall size of the optic, and that's just the best option for that style or that size of optic. What I don't like is when the Allen keys get stuck. As you're adjusting it, you have it right where you want it, and you try to remove it, and in doing so, you're kind of like wiggling it back and forth, try to get it to get unstuck from there, and it moves the dot a little bit, whether it's your windage or your elevation. So far, I haven't had that issue. As I was adjusting it, all I did was put a white line on the back right here, and all that does is help me just find center. And when I pull it up to aim, it really does help me find the red dot like a lot faster when I do it. For me, again, everyone's a little different. You can always try that out. It's a cool little trick. Just find the center. You can either put a little piece of white tape or just use nail polish. I used a little bit of model paint, Tester's model paint. I just put a little strip on there. And you'll find that when you bring up the gun, that little line, that little reference just helps you bring it up that much quicker. So you're not fishing for the dot. You can practice constantly and not worry about it, but that just makes it easier. Even when you're proficient, it's still a good little thing to have. So I don't mind it. You should try it. Again, if you don't like it, if you use a little piece of tape, you could peel it right off. And if you do paint, you just wipe it off. It's not a big deal. But it's something that does come in handy. So that's really about all I've done to it, is that little adjustment, switch out the red dot, ready to take this out. I do have this little thumb ledge. To make it a little bit sturdier, I took off that paper I had just kind of wedged in there, which would help snug it up because this is a 3D printed piece of plastic. I went ahead and put some electrical tape, wrapped it a couple of times, made it nice and snug. So now when I locked it in, it's locked in with no room for movement, which is awesome. And I did bring it up one notch to the front on the Picatinny to help me just push down on the front of the gun a little bit easier. It is 22, so it's not rocking your hands, flipping your wrist or anything like that crazy, but it just gives that stability that you need for longer shots. So your hands, when your hands are back here, again, it's the same thing. You can, depending on how you shoot, just hold the gun steady. A thumb rest just makes it easier because it gives you a place to just kind of lean on the gun. At least for me. Do whatever works for you, but it works for me, so I thought that'd be a cool little addition to it. Of course, it does take away a little bit from the overall size. I can't put it this way. It'll kind of rock with the tail end up. But again, this isn't a carry gun or anything, so I'm perfectly fine with that. Getting back to the red dot, I think it's a good value. It's $149 plus tax. That's what I paid for it. And it even says precision for any budget. The other red dots I was looking at, they averaged anywhere between 120, about 100 to 120, 125. So going up just an extra $25 wasn't the steepest climb, and I think I'm getting a good value out of it because I am getting the brightness adjustments that I wanted. The other ones were all automatic as far as I could see. And second, the other ones were polymer. This is actual aluminum. So I'm getting what I believe to be a sturdier product with the manual adjustments that I was looking for. And the good surprise was the glass. I'll drop in a picture. You'll see how clear the glass is. But it makes a huge difference when you're just looking at smaller items or smaller targets. If it's a squirrel that's at a distance or a bird that's a little too not far, but hard to hit because it's behind branches and things. That extra clarity really makes a difference. You could really put the dot on target as opposed to where it's a little bit fuzzy and you kind of have to guess. You know where the dot is and you're just kind of winging it, but you're you don't have the clearest line of sight. And part of that is because of the clarity of the dot with the dot on there. If you've shot with red dots at a bit of a distance at a smaller target, you know what I'm referring to. You're just kind of putting the dot covering the target and anticipating it's going to hit there, versus when you have a clear glass with a sharp dot, you know exactly what part you're actually aiming at, whether it's the upper or lower part of the target. It just makes it a little bit easier to shoot, and you can shoot with more confidence when you do that. Let me know what you all think about this red dot. I like the way it looks. I don't think I'll be changing it. I hope not. The only reason I would is if something fails, but as long as it holds its zero, I think I did good in getting this optic. The Sealy, nothing wrong with it. I just had a bad first experience with the RMSC. I've heard their larger optics that have that RMR cut have worked out great for other individuals. But for me, if this works out, what I do plan on getting at some point in the near future is going to be another red dot, different model, but from primary arms for my dagger. I don't recall the model number, but because it's a dagger and because this is a 22, I'm trying to keep the overall cost low. I just think a budget gun deserves a budget optic. Not that they're not great and you couldn't put an RMR on a dagger, but to me, I like to keep a theme with the gun, so it's a lower price end gun. I'd like a lower price end optic. It's a quality gun, so I still want a quality optic. Just because it costs less doesn't mean it has to not be quality. And that's just the way I view things. I mean, I've done other ridiculous things too. I've put in triggers and guns that are like, that's half the price of the actual gun. So that's just the theme for this gun and the dagger. You might see other videos. I know it might seem like I'm being hypocritical, but every gun to me speaks something a little different. My Valkortzen 22 has the 507 comp on it. That's a $350, a little bit more optic, but it's also a almost $1,400 gun. So everything's a little different. We'll see how this works out. The one thing I would like to get, if anyone knows where I might be able to get it, is the slide assist, the racking slide assist for the P322 comp. I understand they're not selling the rack assist, the speed ledge, or the compensator for that model. That's essentially what distinguishes it, differentiates it, I should say, from the standard P322. But I would like that little rack assist, or one very, very close to it. I just don't know if SIG themselves is manufacturing them, which is why I can't find them anywhere else, or if there's anything similar, pretty much close to it. And all it really does is grab onto these little serrations, and it's got a screw that goes in the back that helps secure it against the slide. That's all it is. But if I can get that, I'd love to put it on this gun. Again, this is a plinker slash slight hunting gun, so it doesn't have to be the best, but I do want it to be decent quality so that it can last.